fuck it, let's go. What's up, everybody? Back again with another Fatherhoods episode. Last week, I think we had a throwback that we threw at y'all. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed that. That was with the homie Sasha Jenkins.
Sasha, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't get a chance to listen to it, it's an oldie, but definitely a goodie. So please go do that. Pause this, track back to that, and then get down with us because we got a dope guest today as well.
Hey, he's got two dope movies out right now. If you on streaming, the Biz documentary and the Rick James documentary, both of those.
Oh, I gotta check that one out.
Wait, what was the second one?
The Rick James documentary.
Oh,
I didn't realize he did
that
that one as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Sasha's doing work. Is what we're saying. But with us today, we've got he's NPR's music hip hop dude. Like, is that a fair way to describe Mr. Carmichael here?
Yeah.
He's based in Atlanta, big time, obviously hip hop head, and has been documenting hip hop for quite a while. Awesome writer, has a dope podcast. The name escapes me, which is terrible, but you'll remind us in a second. With us today is Mr. Rodney Carmichael.
Rodney, welcome.
What's up?
Thanks for having me, y'all. I really appreciate it. Yeah, resident hip hop dude. That was a good one, but we kind of expanded the folks covering hip hop at NPR now. So
okay,
now we got a few more hip hop folks on the team. So I might not be I'm not the only hip hop dude at NPR Music right now, which is good.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's dope.
No doubt.
And what's the name of the podcast? Your podcast?
And the podcast is Louder Than a Riot.
Right. There you go. Yep.
Yeah, it's me and Sydney Madden. She's my co-host, and we just wrapped up our second season a couple of months back. So, yeah.
Shout out! Oh, by any chance, Abby she was at Tiny Desk, I think.
Yeah.
That's the homie. Yeah, that's the homie.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Abby is a big part of the reason I got hired, I'm sure. And, we worked real close together while she was there. Worked on several projects. The Formula, this hip hop video series, where I think the first season was like on sampling. So we interviewed several legendary producers from Premier to Just Blaze that first season. Dahi out on the West Coast. We and broke down a few of their songs and sampling. Yeah, that was a dope series that I got to work on with Abby. So,
shout out to Abby, man. She's the OG.
Yeah, she was the plug, man.
Yeah, we go back, man.
So Rodney, you have one child, a son. Is that correct?
I got two.
Oh, you have two. Wait, you have a son and a daughter?
I got a son and a daughter. The daughter just came
congrats.
like a year,
Congrats.
Not even quite a year and a half ago. So yeah.
Okay, so and then your son is what?
My son is 4.
4.
Son is 4. Daughter is like about 15 months or so.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we traded one of your articles amongst our little group chat, which struck a chord with us because this is something that we discuss amongst ourselves, and then when we have guests on, artists, and we often ask them like, hey, do your kids listen to your music? Do you put boundaries on when they can listen to certain styles of music, et cetera, and your take on it was definitely hit home with us, and we often struggle with this in terms of at what age and how do we let them listen, and how do we explain some of this stuff in the music,
or even making sense of music that we've produced in the past, or even currently. Sometimes it's just like as you mature, and then as you have your own children, you start to like look back at what you've created, the art that you've created. You're like, well, hold up a second, what was I thinking? What's going on?
Yeah, it's definitely a reason to pause. And I mean, you got to do it. I mean, so that article that you're talking about, that I wrote,
it was like Papa Like Son.
Yeah, like Papa Like Son, and it started first with the actual episode from the last Louder season, and this was a season where the whole season, each episode was 10 episodes that season, and each one of them covered misogyny, homophobia, and all that kind of stuff in hip hop. And obviously it coincided with this rise that we're having and with women in hip hop right now. And it was really just a chance for us to kind of like explore and dissect some of these phobias and isms that continue to kind of run rampant in the culture or had defined the culture for so long.
And be perpetuated.
Exactly. And so a big part of that for me, you know, I was the only, you know, straight black male on the team. And also the oldest, I was the senior member of the team too. So
wait, how old are you, Rodney, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, I'm up there, you know.
You mind me asking?
Come on, man. Look at me. I got a white beard.
I'm 45.
He's around
plus.
our age.
I got the whiskers, you know.
Look, I'm 48. So look, I think Keller might be the oldest. Keller, are you the oldest?
I am. Yeah. I've cracked a different era.
There you go.
You're 50 years of hip hop.
Yeah,
and then some.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's funny you say that. You know, you're kind of referring to yourself as like the older person in the crew, right?
Yeah.
On your side, because I was sitting in the barber chair, and this dude is, you know, my barber's cut my hair. He's talking about he was
again Beijing. Let's be honest.
Never ever. And he's talking about he's hooping, whatever. And he mentions like I was hooping with this old man on the court. And then he keeps telling me the story. The kid, you know, he's like 22 years old. So he's like, and then he divulges the guy's age. And he, you know, in his mind, 43, 45 is old, right?
Horrible.
And I'm like, yo, bro, I'm 43. So when you say that, I think it's hilarious because I mean, I don't think I can't speak for you, but I don't feel old, but I get it. Like if you're talking to a 20-year-old, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, like how your perception of old changes as you age. You know
for sure.
Like, so yeah, but nah, I mean, so really, my role I felt in the season, my responsibility was really thinking about my own accountability in a lot of this. You know, I've been a fan of the culture. I feel like I'm part of the culture ever since I can remember. First, just, you know, in terms of being a fan of the music, but you know, I've been a hip hop writer and journalist for a long time now. So it felt personal, and it felt like I couldn't really honestly cover a season like that without talking about how I've contributed to a lot of that stuff. You know what I mean? And so for me, that really came down to like, well, let's talk about masculinity. You know, let's talk about masculinity in hip hop, because a lot of these tropes that we're talking about, they really define how we, you know, view ourselves as men and carry ourselves as men within the culture, you know. And so in order to do that, the daddy thing was definitely speaking to me, because, you know, even if you've never thought about this kind of stuff, it's almost impossible not to start thinking about it when you become a dad. You know what I mean? You're thinking about the kind of model that you're setting for your kids. You're thinking about what you're passing on, your loves, your passions, our culture. You know, you start examining that stuff in a way. It wasn't my first time in examining that kind of stuff or thinking about it, but it was definitely a reason to do it again and do it on a deeper level. So really, it just became a way to kind of have that kind of conversation and that kind of exploration with myself, and, you know, with other folks on the team, and really with the culture at large. You know, I was really trying to speak to other folks, other men, especially like me, who hopefully have already been kind of grappling with this stuff as we get older. And we look at, you know, like you say, the music we used to make or the music we used to love and still love, and are trying to figure out how do we kind of reconcile a lot of what it was grounded in with where we want the future to go, because we handing this thing off, you know, whether we like it or not. And so a lot of the values instilled in it, we gotta figure out how to question and get right with and feel good about as we hand it off, you know.
It's a brave thing to do, right? Because it's not the easiest thing. You put yourself out on Front Street doing kind of what you just described, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's the right thing to do, and it's not for the people that might read your articles or follow the media that you create, but more so just for this example you're setting in your household, because that foundation is the most critical thing in my opinion, right? And so if like I always find myself in this bind, right, being a lover of hip hop and then coming across a song, and this is just like a microcosm of an example, but like, you know, the wordplay might touch on raunchiness, you know, a lot of bad vocabulary, paint scenarios that are like really graphic, that are completely inappropriate for like a 7-year-old kid, which is my youngest.
Okay.
But I'm there riding along, listening and singing the song in the car, and then I'll hit those parts, and I'm not. I know the question's coming, Daddy. What's that?
Right.
like I'll you know, I'm a big Jay-Z fan, right? So I'll sing like, you know, like one of his joints, and it's like caviar and still like he'll talk about like hymen, and then and I'm like, oh yeah, let me switch this shit.
right. It's a little too early to explain all that.
Yeah, but you got to go through those reps, right? In order for you to like not make what we love out to be a bad guy per se.
Exactly.
But more just like, yo, here's what he's talking about. Here's why I think he's talking about it. You probably don't want to be saying these words, but I want you to understand. So I'm curious, like, given all of the musical context, like how do you approach that? I mean, you go into some of it with the article, but how is it present day? Because that article was a little while ago now.
I mean, it's still pretty much the same person. See, my son, like I said, he's 4. He's at that age where if he hears a Biggie song, everything in it is foreign to him. So he's not necessarily stopping to ask what is that on every lyric, every flagrant lyric, right?
Right.
But he will ask on every time a song starts, he asks what's that about? What's this song about? That's his question. And I just, for shorthand, because you know, kids asking questions, it can go on forever and ever. I just tell him the title of the song, you know, and I let him kind of, you know, interpret as he might from there. And in the piece, I talked about everyday struggle, you know, because that's one of the songs that I don't know, maybe he just recognized my love for the song, and so he started really digging it. But another song, like right about now, another song that he's a fan of, same album, Biggie's debut, is can we cuss on here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, are you listening to censored songs with your son, or the uncensored?
That's a good question. So me and my wife just had this conversation recently. Because she was like, can we start listening to this? Making sure you playing the censored version of it. And I'm like, censored version?
You gonna make me work?
Right. I'm like, actually, I don't think they have the censored version of Biggie's first album on Tidal, because I looked for it early on.
Right.
So I had to go hop to Spotify to do that. I did recently start. When I wrote that piece, I had not started playing the censored version. Okay. Which, like, what was I thinking? I was wilding. But
your kids are gonna say if they catch wind of the uncensored version, they hear that and they start comparing it, because that's what my son does. He's just like, Dad, it's just killing. It's like it's killing the vibe, man.
It's killing the vibe, right?
The censored version is killing the vibe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
How old is your son?
He's 11.
Okay, see, that's about the age we were when we were like, we don't want to hear the censored version. But the other song that he's really into right now is Me and My Bitch. And this is one of the things that started this conversation with me and my wife. We were in the car just recently, and I was playing the censored version, but even playing the censored version of Me and My Bitch is like, wow. It's like, I mean, he does change some words, but the scenarios he's describing is like he's painting a picture that you can't censor. You know what I'm saying?
How do you censor? You look so good. I suck on your.
That's the line. That's the line, my wife. her, and she was like, "Wow."
Yeah, like,
That's
there's no
such
getting
a
around
crazy
that.
line.
Oh, what do you say when he says, "What's the name of this song?" Like, even from the rip.
Me and my dog.
I say me and my girlfriend. I say me and my girlfriend.
Okay. All right.
It's not quite. And he requested by that name now. Hey, Daddy, me and my girlfriend. I'm like, okay, you wanna hear Biggie, me and my B. So yeah, he's probably gonna have issues with me once, like you say, once he hears the real version of these songs. Like, I've been killing the vibe all these years. But I mean, yeah, I guess at some level it is you gotta protect them from now the deeper context we'll have to talk about one day. He's not ready for a conversation that deep, but like I said in the piece, like all of this started because my wife bought him a Biggie shirt, obviously hip hop legend, it's a shirt that I'm sure a lot of people wear that probably aren't even connected to the culture like that.
Right.
But she, they got the little cute toddler size Biggie shirt with the
we got one at the crib too for the kid.
Ready to Die album cover on the. I mean, it's cute. It's like who wouldn't want your kid repping Biggie, at 3-4 years old. And I just, as a hip hop head, I just couldn't have him out in public wearing a shirt like that, or even just at the house, and he have no clue what he has on. So, I took it upon myself. I had to introduce him to Biggie. I had to show him the album cover so he could see the baby and so he could hear, what it is that he's repping. That's how it started. And a lot of the questions came later, but yeah, that was that was like how it jumped off to begin with. So
I'll tell you something about your article that touched home for me, and I've been grappling with this. The fact that, I said that I took a look at the art that I created before, but even now, as I do something called Drink Champs, I grapple with, what that perpetuates to the culture, what the legacy could be, and what it does for my kids. And, and it's crazy because then I told the guys here that my son, who's the youngest, he just turned 3. He goes and he sees a bottle of liquor and he says, "That's daddy's work."
Wow.
And that scares the shit out of me.
Don't change.
Yeah, for real.
But I also have like I'll fall back and I'm a Gemini, so I could think in two different wave patterns. And I'm like, well, as an artist, and I used to say this before I had kids, heavy. Now I question it more. I used to be like, well, as an artist, you're free. You do whatever you want to create. You should have the freedom to do it. And there should be no repercussions of it. And it's art, and you should be able to explain to your children, this is what art is, and they can explain it to what it is, what it represents. But now as I'm more mature, I have kids, it's harder to take that stance. But sometimes I find myself saying, well, look, at the end of the day, this is art. Maybe not the podcast per se, but as a whole, like music and just creation. And sometimes it's going to be raunchy and sometimes it's going to be violent, but it's all an expression. And that's kind of like how you're making sense of it. But it becomes more and more difficult, especially for me as the kids grow up.
Right.
And never mind, like I said, as Drink Champs continues to grow, because mind you, Drink Champs was something that we did as a side thing, never thinking it would grow to what it grew to become. So to see it now entering its 8th year, for myself, I can't speak for Nori. I start to worry about what that, what the legacy is for Drink Champs and what it perpetuates in terms of, the drinking and the substance.
Yeah.
So it, like I said, when I read your article, it kind of like put the mirror in front of me, like, damn, why are you doing this to me, man?
No,
it's an interesting question though, because like, Rodney, you're not as close to it obviously as EFN. Like, from your perspective, how do you perceive the legacy of Drink Champs? I mean, it's not over, right? But as of now, like, because I almost look past the drinking to a certain extent,
and most do. Like, I'll talk to people that I respect in like a Chuck D or a Jerobi from Tribe Called Quest, different people, and they're like, nah, you bugging. Maybe not Chuck D never said it like that to me, but in a sense, some people are like, they look past the drinking, which is really, for me, it's not about the drinking. That's what I'm saying. For me, it's not about that. It's a celebration. This is what we were doing behind the scenes, and we brought it to the forefront. Yeah. But yeah, sorry, that's for that brain fart.
Well, no, I mean, I think, you know, that's like with so many things in our culture. Like, yeah, we have certain things that people might consider vices when exploited, that are part of, you know, how we get down, how we celebrate, how we have fun. You know, when we go to clubs, like,
right,
you wouldn't necessarily take your child to a club at this age in peak hours and you know, unrestricted, you know, introduce them to that lifestyle, you know. So I don't know, I guess maybe Drink Champs is not PG, but so much of hip hop isn't, you know what I
right, for
mean?
sure.
And you know, that doesn't mean, I don't think that, I mean, I think honestly, when we talk about like our kids and how they perceive things and what we might be introducing them to, obviously it's wise to think about all of that stuff. But I think the bottom line is they're going to be adults too one day. You know what I mean? And they're going to be participating in culture and all of that kind of stuff too. And a lot of hip hop is adult entertainment. You know, I don't think that necessarily means that we have to worry about how our kids are going to perceive it. I mean, there's a reason why, you know, we have parental guidance stickers. There's a reason why our parents were worried about what we were listening to and all that kind of stuff. You know, I think I more so think about what kind of stuff is getting passed on, like, unconsciously. Like, you know, I was saying before, like, ideas around masculinity, things that we think if you're not doing this or behaving this way or standing this way or excluding these kind of people, then you're not a real man. You know what I mean? And that kind of stuff, I feel like, is harder to explain than, like, you know, drugs and alcohol, because, you know, there are good ways to do things and there are bad ways to do things, but, you know, it doesn't necessarily make it bad altogether. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I tend to think they're going to understand that one as they continue to age, and hopefully at the young age they're at now, they, just because they're being exposed to it, they're not trying to dip into it quite yet. You know.
I think you're right about how these things get passed on, and maybe it's less to do about, maybe we should be worrying more about some of these things that are getting passed on, like when it comes to masculinity, like, you know, doing a bid is a badge of honor, like that makes you a man, that kind of mentality, as opposed to like you're gonna get raunch and you're gonna get, you know, that kind of shit no matter what in life. But some of these other things can be definitely more pervasive, and harder to kind of control, blocking from a kid's ears and mentality.
Exactly. Yeah.
Are you preparing for those kind of deeper discussions? And are you monitoring how your behavior is with your kids to try to not inject some of those, you know, things that you probably have been instilled in you that you're trying to work through, so that you're more cautious, so you don't pass some of those things on to your kids?
Well, you know, the wild thing in making that episode and writing that piece, was realizing that ultimately I need to be doing it for myself, not just for the sake of the kids, right? I mean, I guess on one level you could be like, hey, I'm already ruined, and you know what I'm saying, there's no turning back. But a lot of the questions that I find myself grappling with, and that, you know, even we as a team were kind of grappling with and trying to work out through this masculinity episode and piece, it's like, you know, what is the real reason? Who exactly are we trying to benefit by being better? Who deserves for us to be better, you know, to them, and that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I think, and honestly, like, a lot of these questions are things I'm still grappling with, and I want to continue to work on in other formats and stuff like that, because, you know, I don't know if the kids really get better from just us having conversations with them. You know, it's like the do as I say, do not as I do thing, right? Like you gotta kind of lead in terms of being changed or reconciling your own past, or grappling with kind of like cultural identity and that kind of stuff. I don't think it's enough to just be worried about how we talk to them about it if we still are kind of sitting in it ourselves. So I haven't really thought a whole lot about that stuff. I mean, y'all's kids are older, so y'all in the thick of it.
I would say you're in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Like 1 and 4. She could be a little. It's different though. Everybody's stage, there's some.
Yeah, and I'm 3 and 5 over here.
Maybe in the thick of the conversation period, as opposed to
exactly. Yeah. Because my son is just getting at that point where, I mean, even when we made the piece, his conversation was a lot more simpler, and his train of thought, or his ability to stay on his attention span, it was really short, and already he's come so far just in a few months in terms of how long he could stick with a topic, or the kind of deep questions he can ask, and the kind of concepts he seems like he can grapple with. So yeah, I'm sure I'm going to be dealing with some challenging questions, but hopefully in a lot of ways, in terms of some of the stuff I'm planning to work on between now and then, I already start having some of those answers worked out. I think I kind of want to work on a book around some of this stuff, and some stuff that might kind of go into my own personal experience on a memoir type level a little bit more, to kind of work out a lot of that stuff myself. And I don't know. I think it's honest work. I think it's work that is kind of deserving of I mean, I think the kids deserve the kind of work that we do on ourselves in terms of making ourselves better, and the hope that we can be better models and that kind of stuff.
And let's be honest though, this is not even just a hip hop problem. This is a societal issue. And like, for example, how do you guys feel about raising sons? Like, where we're now grappling with these like hyper macho things that we kind of grew up in, masculinity and all this stuff. But it's like, it comes natural to me to point them in a direction where I don't want them to be, I don't want to, what is it? Demasculate? What is it? Emasculate?
Emasculate.
Yeah, emasculate. I want him to be my little boy growing up. Obviously we're in a time and an age where we're understanding of all the different things, gender and all this stuff happening. So if my son or my daughter were to grow up at a certain age and feel that they feel like something else, they will go one way or the other. As a father, I'm going to love them regardless. Like, that's how I feel. But at the ages that they are now, I'm raising them as my son and my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like we're in a time in our society and day and age that it's confusing us as parents. When we kind of were raised a certain way, and you're just kind of like going along with, okay, yeah, you're my son, you play with the G.I. Joes, you play with the cars. This is my daughter, she plays with the dolls. But then society now is like, nah, that's not the way it's supposed to go, and you're wrong. And you're like, whoa.
Yeah, there's a lot of push, a lot more, not necessarily push, but there's way more information about you could do this, or you could be this, or you could be that, or do this, that, and so what makes for an already confusing time of just learning how to parent or learning how to deal with small kids. I think it makes it even more confusing when there's so much stuff in the mix that I don't even know if we have it wrapped around our heads and how to explain it or how to navigate it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I made this episode, and the episode that the article resulted from, I made this episode with my main collaborators on it were trans team members on my team that are trans. My editor, my producer, both trans, and I was working with them on a daily basis, and it definitely made me and challenged me in a way that probably I'm sure wouldn't have if I was just working with, straight guys,
Right.
like myself, who kind of had the same perception, the same experience, the same mentality about, the state of masculinity, etc. So a lot of these gender roles and perceived gender roles, um, and things like that, and even just the language that we use, a lot of times were things that I had to really kind of like check myself on or think 2 and 3 times about, because like you say, it's definitely a different world than it was, when we were coming up in terms of a lot of that stuff. And like you said, the last thing we want to do is perpetuate a lot of the marginalization that was, such a part of the culture. And I ain't talking about hip hop culture, like you said, Evan, like the mainstream culture, mass culture, right. American culture, Western culture, when we were coming up. So I really, really appreciate them for working with me, because I'm sure on a lot of levels, they were kind of putting themselves at risk on a certain level, just because you just never know what you're dealing with. I mean, a lot of the subject matter in the episode was about me being, fresh out of high school and, dealing with a lot of the stuff that we deal with as young men coming up, or be it rape culture, or be it just like the hyper masculinity and, the celebration of, pimping and pimp culture and all this kind of stuff that kind of comes along with it. And a lot of it is like celebrated through our music and through hip hop. So, it gave me a lot to think about, man. I really appreciate having them as collaborators, for real.
It's I think it's a necessary thing, and it's a little bit conflicting, because when, like in our case, right, straight males of color, which I think adds another degree of like machismo to the mix, right?
Yeah.
Not being able to have dialogue with like your team, for instance, the members of your team that are trans, and have it in a way that is that the other side doesn't feel offended, unless you're purposely offending. But because there's a lot of just genuine organic questions that one has, or your normal way of speaking, you might
dealing with ignorance fairly.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I'll give you a perfect example, right? Like pronouns, as an example, still something that's very complicated for me to grasp.
Yeah.
But like, if I think that I perceive you as a male, I'm going to refer to you as he, right? Without knowing what your preference is. That's how I'm going to approach it. But if you're able to then correct me and say, hey, nah, I'm they, right? It's still not going to, it's going to take me a while for that to like sink in, right? So for those folks that are that way, to be like patient and be able to like work with people that are just ignorant to it, I think is a big need, right? And I feel like the folks that I've encountered that are trans or identify something different than what they present, I've had the good fortune of being able to like work through it with them a little bit, versus like them like be appalled that I would dare refer to them as she when that's what that person looked like, right? So like, it sounds like you have that, which is a super valuable education, because at the end of the day, I feel like, and particularly as it comes to what we pass on to our children, it's about good human interaction. Like that's the foundation of the basis of it. Like I don't give a shit what your preferences are, so long as they aren't gonna hurt or jeopardize anything that I'm doing or my kids are doing. And if we could just respect each other on just a basic level, like I think it's cool. We just got to figure out what that common ground is.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely misgendered folks, and like you say, it's their ignorance from the starting point. But then even when you get caught up to speed, it's like the learning curve, and learning how to do something that you've done, unconsciously without thinking about it for so long. And now making sure that you are not just, unconsciously doing the same thing. So, I find that, at the end of the day, everybody is human and forgiving as well, as long as your intention is good, but I think it definitely takes effort and conscious effort to make sure that, we're respecting people's identities and that type of thing. And it really starts to expand. And this is the cool part. It really starts to expand, I think, for me, the way I look at gender identity, and you begin to see a lot of the tropes that come along with, like, Black masculinity, for instance, and you begin to question what part of that, is based on certain levels of marginalization that we went through as Black men, as men of color, where we had to kind of, like, lean into it even further just to prove to other folks that, hey, we are every bit of a man, despite you trying to take our manhood from us for all these hundreds of years. And, I think in a lot of ways, that's the history of how and why men of color sometimes seem to have this more exaggerated form of masculinity, or hyper, as we sometimes say. It's all steeped in our own marginalization, you know what I mean? And so, I think the last thing that we want to do, I would hope, is put that same, is marginalize other folks who are not fitting into, the frame or box that's kind of been put on us, you know what I mean? So, it's about enlightenment around that, and we're in an era where a lot of that is becoming expansive after a long time of it not being very regressive, you know what I'm saying? And I'm sure at a certain point we're going to look back at this time, and it's going to seem like it was long overdue for some of this change to come, and we just happen to be living through it right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And for us, it's like, we're unpacking it as it's happening right now. We're trying to figure it out, but our ultimate goal is to raise these children to be, decent, good human beings, confident in who they are, and at the same time respecting who other people are.
Exactly.
But obviously, for that to be a total success, we kind of have to understand it ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at, we're trying to, all figure that out, I guess.
Got one more question before we head out of here for you, Rodney.
Okay.
You have a 15-month-old, you said, daughter.
Yeah, she's about 15, 16 months old.
You in it, man. You in it.
So,
man.
We just got out of
when you count the months. I used to, when you're in a parent, people, he's 22 months. I'm like, 2 years? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, I used to hate that. Somebody hit me with like 30 months old. I'm like, bruh, like, come on, dog. But so life is very different now that you have a daughter. When you started out with a son, I would imagine. Right. And then on top of that, you have like a mixed race relationship, right? I think your wife is of Indian descent. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
She's Indian.
So that all of that kind of together. Now you have a baby girl, right? Mm-hmm. What is your outlook on, life now? Because it must have changed a little bit as you're raising your son. You're kind of looking at the world and how he plays in it a little bit differently than now with your daughter. What's your take, and like, what are you most fearful of as you're navigating parenthood at this point?
Oh man, you asking like the big. That could be a whole nother show, man.
I'm trying to fit that in the 2 minutes.
That's the longer form podcast.
For real. I mean, we got the typical worries. Despite all that, we got the typical worries I'm sure that everybody kind of has right now. I mean, when we think about our kids, we we talk about a lot of this climate stuff sometimes, and all these fires popping off everywhere. You start to wonder, we got to be prepared, because whether it's fire or water, it seems like something is gonna come out of nowhere at any time, and you want to be stocked up to the best of your ability. Could you live off the grid if necessary? I ain't ready for it, but that's some of the stuff you think about, and it's like maybe we got 10 or 20 years, maybe something crazy could happen next week. Who knows?
Yeah.
And then there's the race thing, and yeah, like you said, we're dealing with that too, which even though we're both people of color, sometimes the colorism thing even comes into play, because like my son is very light. He favors my wife, and our daughter is not quite as dark as I am, but she leans more toward my end of the spectrum in terms of color. And I think a lot about that. I think about what it's going to mean for my son to maybe have to deal with questions challenging, his blackness and that kind of thing amongst kids. I mean, he looks black. Black folks, we run the spectrum in terms of shades and all of that. So I don't think it'll be anything strange, but it doesn't mean that he won't get that kind of stuff sometimes. And then I think about, my daughter and how maybe she's going to get compared to him a lot of times. And, well, y'all brothers and sisters, or how could that be? Or how come he looks this way and you look that way? And that kind of thing. So that kind of stuff is stuff that I definitely think about. And I think, honestly, it's just about instilling in your kids, to the best of your abilities, a strong sense of who they are, a pride for who they are, and, the cultural mix that they come from. I got books on deck that I haven't even had time to read myself yet about, the history between Black Americans and Indians, and a lot of kind of, history that's kind of unknown in terms of shared sense of culture and that kind of stuff. So I want them to feel 100% invested in who they are, and totally own that and be prideful about it. Because, when you feel good about who you are on the inside, it matters less. I mean, again, kids gonna be kids. You're gonna hear a lot of shit, but it matters less. And it's harder for people to, take you out your game, or off of how you feel about yourself. You know what I mean? That esteem. So that, I think that's the really important thing.
Oh, it's funny. The other thing you mentioned about being ready for anything today, I don't know how I had time, because I never have time to watch anything on TV anymore. But this morning I made some time and I threw on this show Invasion on Apple TV.
Okay.
It's about aliens invading, and then there's a family with two kids, a boy and a girl, just like I do and just like you do. And I was like, damn, man, I'm here thinking, what if World War III? What if famine? What if flood? What if hurricane? Now I got to think about a goddamn alien invasion coming. How the fuck am I gonna keep my kids safe from this shit? I'm seriously, I got nervous. I'm like watching this shit. I'm like, God, what the fuck are we gonna do?
Yeah,
it's called sci-fi. It's called sci-fi, bro. Don't worry.
Yeah, okay. Have you watched congressional hearings on UAPs? Yep. It ain't sci-fi no more. It's either psy-ops, but it ain't sci-fi.
The way Congress,
the alien mummies.
No, that shit was bullshit.
The way Congress been running, it look a little science fiction the way the government's been running a little bit. So I don't know.
No, it's a psyops, maybe that it is.
I ain't gonna lie though. I'm still more worried about the people in power here than the aliens coming.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Aliens haven't been even bothering us for real. If they really been here, they've been here for thousands of years already.
Yeah, you're probably right.
They ain't been doing shit. They just watching us going, these fucking humans.
they laughing their asses off at us.
Right.
The whole world looks like a hood to them. They're like, I ain't going down there.
Yo, Rodney, man, thank you so much for making the time.
Hey, I thank y'all.
It's a pleasure having you, man. Thank you for chopping it up with us, and we'll definitely be checking. When is the next season of Louder Than a Riot?
Okay, so that's the thing. Louder Than a Riot is out the box now. It's gotten. I don't think they like us to use the word cancel, but it's not coming back for season 3 at NPR.
Okay.
So whether or not it has life outside of NPR is up in the air right now, but NPR had to do a lot of cutbacks and a lot of layoffs.
Right.
They laid off most of our team in the middle of our season, and our team stayed until they finished the season.
Wow.
Shout out to the team.
Yeah, for real. They the best narrative podcast team in the business, as far as I'm concerned. Producers and editor and all of that stuff. So yeah, Louder Than a Riot lives, but not in the not at NPR, not in the package that it was last season. So we'll see. But you might see me and Sid pop up somewhere else doing something else, or for now we're still at NPR and hopefully continuing as long as we can to do deep, thoughtful, important hip hop work.
Dope.
Yeah.
Well, my brother, you take care, enjoy those children, and we wish you well navigating this parenting thing.
Hey,
don't fuck it up.
Hey, appreciate it, man. Hey, I appreciate y'all.
Nah, thank you for coming through, man.
All right, buddy. Be good, man.
Y'all take care.
All right.
Peace.
Bye.